change the music.
Good
a little
deal.
bit. Oh,
Jeff, it's great to see you again.
You too, buddy. How's your week been?
It's been great. It has been one where I don't know what it is. This is a week where I'm constantly taking notes. I am using my decomposition book.
Oh, nice.
Yes, to be able to collect all of these notes that I made on Andor. So I'm like super excited for this week. But how about you, Jeff? How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I went to a little dinner party last night in San Francisco, which was kind of cool. Met some new folks.
Nice.
But yeah, watching Andor this week was like the highlight. Like, it's been busy, but that was the highlight for sure. And I just remember I was so busy yesterday, I did not have time to actually record any videos, whatever, about my thoughts on it. Which probably worked out good because I don't know that I could have done it without giving spoilers. So I think it works out better to do like our show tonight and then just do a swath of videos tomorrow. But it's been good. Like this show that we're going to get into, I mean, getting into it tonight, I don't know how to say it. It reminded me of the vibes and the emotions I had the first time seeing the first episode of The Mandalorian.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I did have I have a lot of Mandalorian-like notes.
Yeah.
For this episode, for especially the first episode. I have a lot of Mandalorian-like notes. I actually think that this is a return to something, and they that if I was working on this show, I would over-rotate into this type of production. That's just my 2 cents. But I can't wait. I cannot wait to talk about this because I've got a lot of notes. I got a lot of thoughts.
You get the notes. All right, well then, heck, let's just get into it then. I'm going to tiptoe around it. Let's just do it.
Let's go.
All right.
Punch it.
Yes. Awesome, dude.
Right on.
It is good to be back. And it's even better to be here specifically for that title right up there that we've been talking about for months.
Like,
I mean,
getting there.
Exactly. I mean, we were excited for Kenobi, obviously. And like that was, we had our whole road to Kenobi. We did all kinds of episodes related to that. But something about this is a different thing. Like, it's a different show. It's a different vibe. And it's an all, I mean, even though the Kenobi story was an all new story, because we hadn't seen that story in that way, we all knew Kenobi. So we had a lot of background kind of going in. This, we don't know anything about this. Like, everything that we get in this show that we watch this week is something that is new. Everything, every single thing, with the exception of maybe Cassian Andor. Everything else is like, wait, what is going to happen here? What's playing out? How is this going down? I don't know. It made it super, super exciting for me.
You know, I didn't really think of it like that, and I think you're absolutely right. I think that for the way that prequels go, that typically the hardest thing with a prequel is you're trying to match the old with the new. But one of the things that really stuck out to me, and I think you're right, is when the Obi-Wan show was going on, you knew he was going to fight Darth Vader. You knew it.
Yes.
You knew Darth Vader was coming into that show. And they didn't skimp on it. It was 2 Vader fights, you know? You knew you were going to see a young Luke. There were beats that you could almost predict. This is what's going to happen. This show has a lot of like unknowns. Like, I don't really know what's going to happen. I don't really know why certain things are happening. And I thought that was really interesting. There are a lot of things that I really like. There are some things that I do not like, and those could be fixed. I am putting a big pause on my not likes, because I think that I don't like this because it's going to be different in a couple more episodes. But I think the thing I like the most about it is what you just said. It's everything about it feels new to Star Wars.
Yeah,
and I like that. I like that a lot.
You make me remember, like, as soon as you started saying that, I'm like, I got some thoughts. I got to get on my notebook real quick and write them down so I don't forget about them.
Oh, man. Like, what did the kids say? And this is going to, like, my teenager would be kicking me right now. I came with receipts. I'm like, I went episode by episode and just kept making notes. Which is funny. I always want to talk to people about what it's like when we do these shows. Like the work that goes, the pre-work that goes into it. And we always talk about making notes, but when we do this show, a big part of it is we'll watch the episode. Like typically and I'd love to hear how you do this. I usually do a draw, like a regular. I'm just a dry run. I'm gonna just watch it. Like I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna enjoy myself. I'm just gonna have fun. Um, and then I watch it again for the notes, so that way we can have the show. This time, I couldn't get through the opening segment, and I went, I gotta start taking notes because this stuff's coming in fresh, and I'm gonna write it down while it's coming in. And so yeah, like it's a lot of pre-work. I don't I how is it on your side, Jeff? What is the pre-work? What is the pre-show when we do this is what it's going to be like for the next couple of weeks. We're going to be coming in talking about these episodes of Andor.
Yeah, so pre-show before any episode of anything from Star Wars is basically just nonstop anxiety and biting my fingernails until the show starts. It's just a nonstop panic attack until it begins. And then somewhat relief when I watch the show. No, I'm totally kidding. When I go in to watch the show, I do very much what you were describing. I go into my preference always, unless, like you said, sometimes it happens or it has happened where I'm like, nope, I gotta start writing notes because there's stuff here and I'm gonna forget it if I don't write it down.
Yes.
But normally what I try to do is go in and just be consumed in the episode or the movie and just let myself just be completely consumed by whatever emotions are triggered, whatever things are happening, and just go with it. And just kind of like do the cymbal monkey claps and like be very excited genuinely. And then give myself a day or two to kind of like just absorb whatever just happened, and then go back and rewatch it where I don't feel like, well, there's, like not the kind of like the opposite or the inverse of a jump scare, like a jump surprise, like, like the scene from Wolf of Wall Street, the ooh, 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 that like that moment. I that way those are done. I know those are coming. And so now I can let myself look at the other things that are happening and not worry so much that I'm going to miss a detail, because I will pick up on other details that I missed. But that's not why I'm doing it. More of like to try to understand what I actually saw and why, find those places where I felt emotion, and I still do. And then try to understand why did I feel that. But I always like to watch it first just to let myself just enjoy the thing. And then go back and do notes or whatever else.
Yeah, I was so excited, and that's typically my end game. Like I'll do exactly that. Like my MO is I just watch it, and then I kind of give it a day, and then I go back, and then it becomes more of a, and I'm kind of glad we're talking about this, because this is kind of a thing about putting on shows like this, is that sometimes Jeff and I get questions about like how do you guys do this, and when you're doing like review shows like this, it really becomes a very like studious. There's a part of it where when we're watching the show, we're spending a lot of time taking notes, like, really getting some themes down, like getting things down, and then we don't compare notes until the show. That's a big part of it. It's like coming in fresh, so that way we can share this. What I think is really funny is this time I could not get that far. I couldn't. I don't think I made it to the first scene. And I went, no, I'm going to forget a lot of stuff that I'm thinking about as we're going.
Mm-hmm.
And most specifically, that almost out of the gate, and we can jump into this in just a second, but I'll just this is a non-spoilery thing. The thing, this is what started me going, I'm going to go get my notepad, was I liked the opening credits. And I was like, I liked the way that the credits opened, where it's the small crescent of like a planet or a moon or whatever, and it's this small crescent, and then the Andor title sequence comes up like this.
Yeah.
And I remember when I went and saw Rogue One, and I remember thinking, I wonder if they'll do an opening crawl, and they didn't. But what they did have is they had the shadows of rings that looked like an opening crawl that was happening from far away. Yes. And I thought that was the cool thing. And this was the reverse of Star Wars, because when Star Wars opens, it goes Star Wars, and it's just boom, and then you get an opening crawl. And this, I liked how it was something coming out of the shadows. And I thought that was also very
Yes.
I mean, it's very on brand for this show. And so I think that was the moment where I was like, you know what? I'm not going to make it. I need to start taking notes on this show right out of the gate. That's how much I was enjoying how it was made.
Mm-hmm. By the way, so we can just get right into it. And hold on, do I have it ready? Tell me I have it ready. There will be spoilers.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. We are not. We're taking no prisoners
No
in our
prisoners. Sorry,
review
everybody.
of
Just you are warned. You have been
Yeah.
warned. If you haven't watched the show yet and you are okay with being spoiled, great. If not, I don't want to tell people ever to like not be on our show, but you probably need to go do something else right now because this is going to be spoiler central.
Yeah. By the way, this is not a family. Like our show could be a family show, but Andor not a family show.
Not a
So
not a
you're
family
like,
show.
oh, I gotta bolt and go and watch this show. This is not a family show. This is not a show that some of these shows like Mandalorian, the original Mandalorian, the first season, I could watch that with my kids and it's great.
Easily.
I watch Lower Decks and Star Trek Strange New Worlds with my kids. I would not watch a lot of Discovery episodes with my kids. But this show is not a family show. I'll just say that from the outset. So if you want to go watch it right now, that just keep in mind that that's the audience here.
Yep.
This is a really intense show, and Jeff, I would like to hear your vibe on it, just out of the gate, like your feelings, like emotions. To me, it's a very intense, high stress show, and I can't wait to tell you about how I was very wrong about something that I think I'm gonna soon be right on.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I want to hear that. Before we get into anything, you had mentioned the opening credit. The instant that happened, specifically the music that was playing when I was watching this with the group that I was watching it with the other day, I threw this out immediately, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, yes, that's what I was thinking." 2001: A Space Odyssey, instantly. Like I was like, "Oh, this is." Yeah. I mean, for a moment I actually thought they were using the music from 2001, and then until I finally heard it, I'm like, "Oh no, that's not actually it." But it was. There were so many elements, and I'm with you. The crawl, the planet, kind of seeing the sunny side of the planet kind of creeping into view, like, and I loved that because it told you right off the bat emotionally what you should expect to be happening, and like you said, the word Andor kind of fades in, but in a way that's like almost like it was this way, and you can't see like the letters, but as it turns, it gains a sunlight reflection. Like things are being revealed to you, but they're being revealed to you in ways you don't quite understand. That's what the tone it sort of set for me the moment that happened. But I love that what we walk into with this show. I'm trying to even remember the opening scene, but we walk into a show where it sort of reminded me in some ways of this really. People may love this movie, but I think it was just terrible. Or Run Lola Run. It's this woman who runs through Germany that has this shenanigans sort of adventure. It's not a thriller, but it's a suspense sort of. There were elements of that because Cassian is on the move basically the entire first 3 episodes.
Yeah,
he almost never stops moving, and it's almost him. You almost see his back and his side profile as he's looking over his shoulder more than you see him do almost anything else. And that may be a perception on my part, but that's what it felt like. Like we're following him along. We dropped right into a story that was actively happening. Like a droid cam just dropped in right behind him and started following him while something was already going on. And so a lot of elements of the show, all 3 of the first episodes, and we'll get to some of the details here in a minute, some of the things that took me out of it a little bit, but I liked that because you immediately go, wait, what? Sorry, whoa, what's happening? What? Oh, I've just got to get with it. Like I've got to get with whatever's going on here. I've just got to go with it, and I like that because it breaks this paradigm of we need to set something up. We've got to give you some words in the beginning. In the 18th century, no, you're just going to go and you're going to get into the story. Just go with it. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I liked that. I wrote down the words, "There's no rest for the wicked," and even when he's at rest, he's moving, he's jittering. And what's really funny is that my favorite character, even though I'm a big fan of Cassian Andor, My favorite character on this show is who I call Fussy. It's the bad boy Boimler. If you've watched Star Trek Lower Decks, there is a character that is a lovable goof, and his name is Boimler. And he's all prissy, and he's very fussy, and he's all buttoned up. And there is the exact same person on this show, and he is Cassian Andor's opposite number. And I loved this character. I loved it because there isn't I love when you have protagonists and antagonists that are set up this way, and in a way that one character, a great antagonist, should be able to use all of a protagonist's strengths against them.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved this. I absolutely loved how this was set up. But yeah, the first thing I saw when he was moving around and running, and as you said, like the camera's following him, there's all these really tight shots. All I thought is there's no rest for the wicked. Like you're just running. But I don't want to get in too far. So I'd love to kind of hear your run at this as the show opens. You also get this like really gritty scene where he's going through what I was like, oh, this is like a red light district, and
yes,
that is exactly what it is. And then it's later said to be a brothel by another character.
So
yeah, keep going.
I love that. I'm gonna say I love this. I'm gonna say that phrase a lot. The show, I loved that. I really enjoyed that. Not the brothel part, like not specifically because he goes into a brothel. I don't want to get the wrong impression. Yeah. No, but
that's what makes a show.
Yes. What Matt? So I'm gonna come back to Matt's first comment. And Matt, dude, it's awesome to have you here, buddy. But this comment right here, 100%, bad math, but like 1,000%.
I don't think you can see my notes here, but I have my third note is this feels like Blade Runner.
Yes.
Old and new.
I went back and re-listened to
old and new.
I went back and re-listened to the Blade Runner song, and I was like, yes, it was like Blade Runner, Altered Carbon, like 100% that sort of feel. 100%, Matt, 100%.
Well, it's noir. It is the dystopian noir. The rain, the amount of rain. I was like, oh, this is Blade Runner. And even when Cassian takes off on that ship, all I thought was, I wonder if Edward James Olmos is piloting that ship, making tiny origami unicorns.
Yep.
Because like that whole thing, the rain, the look, his jacket, the duster. I was like, oh, this is Rick Decker.
Yeah.
This whole setup.
It's exactly what it felt like. It definitely. And I actually really liked that when he came out of the brothel. I'll get back to the brothel part in a second. But when he came out of it and he put his hood on, he walked in the rain and there's the rain and he puts his hood on. And it's a simple thing, but I like it because it didn't do what a lot of, like even Blade Runner does, where Decker's walking around and doesn't have anything on. His head's all wet because he's getting rained on. I liked that because there is it's almost like you're seeing that character trying to be something, trying to be a big kid almost, but not really there yet. Like, and so like, I'm not going to let myself just get rained on because, I got a hard, stern look, but I still don't want to get wet. And I really do, Matt. I really do. But I like that because it does reinforce that while he's in this scene, he's not a kid in the sense of where his character is at with what will become the Rebel Alliance and all those things. He is still very immature. He's doing what he's doing, but it has consequences, and he doesn't totally know how to deal with those consequences, as we learn throughout the first episode and the second and third. He figures it out, so to speak. Shouldn't say like everything's rainbows when it's over, but he does get through it. But it's clear that he's also trying to figure out, because he doesn't quite have the experience to know how to deal with that. And for me, that hood up in the rain is kind of a metaphor for I'm prepared, but I'm not actually that prepared just yet. I still got to kind of put the big kid pants on a little bit before something happens. So Matt, the reason why I want to touch on the brothel is specifically because officially now, like sex has been introduced into Star Wars.
Oh, that's true. That's true. I know that made headlines.
Yes.
That was and I will say this is a part of this show not being
Right.
for kids, because there's also some very adult relationship themes that
Yes.
come up further in episode 2, I think it is.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I completely agree with the kind of grittiness, some of the realism that's like in there. But yeah, I was getting these Blade Runner vibes. If anybody saw the reboot of Tron, like
Yeah. Hmm.
the Tron, do you remember when he's going up to the he's and apparently it rains inside of computer programs as well, because I remember it was raining when they're walking through, and the young Flynn is like walking through. All of this just screamed like, this is Blade Runner. This is the mega city.
Yes.
This is I've talked a lot about a really strange Jodorowsky comic book called The Inkle.
Hmm.
It is out of that. Like, all of these things are built upon these other things. I will say that this is a thing that I gotta say. I I I liked it, and then at the same time, I liked the things where I was like, "Oh, this reminds me of this." But I will say, Jeff, there were too many times that I kept saying, "This reminds me of something else," and maybe it's just that that's the state of stories now. But the if there was a thing that I did get caught up on, was is this reminds me, like when you were talking about the opening sequence, that is a shot remake of 2001. You are absolutely right. The crescent with the pullback, that is how you know how far away the discovery is, or how far they're moving away. When that's how far, that even when the monolith appears, that's how the monolith appears when you're
Hmm.
around Jupiter. That shot, it feeling like Blade Runner, it feeling like Tron, it feeling like Wally. There was a segment where I was like, "Oh, dude, this is like Wally," and that's the only thing that I started to go. Um, and I think this is a fact. I think it's storytelling now. I don't think that this is. I think it's almost accidental
Hmm.
that people put things into movies because it helps to connect to an emotion from another thing. Um,
Hmm. Yeah. No, I can see
but
that.
this is by the it's I know I've talked about this before. It's the Star Trek episode, Next Generation episode Darmok, where they're able to talk in metaphor. We all talk in memes and in common frames of reference. The fact that three of us here saw Blade Runner and immediately connected to what that means emotionally into a story. That's like the currency in how we tell stories now, is reference. I will just say that I got to a point where I was like, this. I might be at peak amount of reference in this
Yeah.
show.
I could definitely see that. Yeah. I multiple times watching it. Now that you say this, I remember thinking, wow, that reminds me of, oh, this very much has this kind of vibes. Not in a negative way, but you do bring up a good point that it, having those sorts of references in our heads almost has the tendency to kind of take you out of it for a moment. And rather than
Yes.
allowing you to experience it in the moment, what you're experiencing is a revisiting of a moment from some other time. Not wholly bad, but oh
Yes.
yeah, and absolutely um, in the Matt, in the live stream I was on, or the watch party I was on, at least one other the one other person, as we're like, oh my god, that's, and as soon as I went to, I didn't even say the word, this person chimed in for me and we just went Wally, and we're like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's what that, and it's like adult voice, but then it's sad kid like emotions. The droid,
Yes.
it was very, I I get what they were going at with that, I really do. I'm not sure I liked it.
Yeah, and I will say that Wally. By the way, I agree with Matt. Like Wally, like who's what's derivative of what now?
Yeah.
That's kind of that's the issue here, kind of with storytelling now, is what is derivative of what? What came first? I will say though that I did like that droid a lot. I love
Oh, I do too.
I, I talk about this on I think almost every show, Jeff. I Droids are why that's like what I love about Star Wars. I love the droids. Um, um, I will say that the voice for this droid, which I think is B2EMO, which at first
I
What,
think I missed
right?
that.
Right? I think the droid's name is B2EMO. Someone correct me. To be honest, I could be wrong. I think that's the name. It's emo. But it reminded, I heard B2EMO and I thought BMO. And then the more that droid talked, if you've ever watched Adventure Time, that droid talks like Nepter.
Yeah.
Who's a microwave that has like an arm and like it's a sentient microwave. And every time that droid would talk, I'd be like, this is Nepter from Adventure Time. And also he acted like I've given it a gender. It acted like Nepter from Adventure Time. And that's what I mean by there were so many times where I was like, this reminds me of this other thing.
Mm-hmm.
And let's like you said, it's not bad. It's just I'd get pulled out of it.
Yeah.
And then I was like,
There was something, speaking of that droid specifically, our super emo droid that's named emo.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved its interaction with Cassian. Cassian talks to it like a real person, which I really love when that happens in Star Wars, where the character treats the droid like a real creature as opposed to a artificial life form. I really do appreciate that because it reinforces that while some people may see them as just machines, that many other people see them as actually a companion and part of their life. But the voice, it wasn't so much the voice, but it was the combination of the droid talked like it talked in a very childlike way. Like, you're gonna leave me behind. You're gonna leave me behind, and that's okay. Like, I don't have a problem with that. We get that with BD and Fallen Order and things like that. But the tone of its voice felt very mature, and that vibe had a very sort of Mice and Men, Lenny sort of vibe to it that didn't feel right to me. It felt like I get it's almost like childlike and it has its attachment to you because it grew up with you. Like, I get that, like, and run with it. Yeah. Like, I actually really enjoyed that component of the age of that droid and how scarred up it looks. And when we see other scenes where the droid looks like it's in brand new condition and Cassian is much, much younger, we see the actual age represented. It can't hold a charge as long as it used to be able to, has to charge all the time, has to save its strength. Like, I actually really appreciated that. That was a good way to connect us to Cassian and his age and the type of life he's had to lead, because we could visually see it in that droid on its surface. But the tone of voice and how it behaved felt very, like I said, of Mice and Men to me. And I don't think in and of itself that's a bad thing, but for me, it felt strange. Like,
yes.
Like what are you trying to what emotion are you trying to affect by doing that? And maybe that lands really nicely with some people. For me, it made me feel sort of icky. I'm not sure how better to describe that.
Yeah, so I agree with you on that. And this is where so if you've been watching the show the last few weeks, this is where I was like wrong about a lot of stuff. Because if you would have told me that there was going to be a Nepter-like droid on the show, I would have been like, no. I was expecting, based off of the trailer, that we were going to kind of jump right into a political thriller. And so when we were getting to this show and people would say, well, what's a good, like, what's some good preps things to watch in advance? And I was saying things like All the President's Men. That's a great political thriller. Manchurian Candidate from 1952. It's got its problems. Still a good thriller. All of these, No Way Out, a crazy Kevin Costner movie from the 1980s. Great political thriller. Again, a movie with its problems. I thought it would 3 Days of the Condor. I'm sorry, I'm going to stop doing that. This first 3 episodes. So this is what I think, that when I said at the top of the show, Jeff, a thing that I was wrong about that I think I'm going to be right about is I think these first 3 episodes are not the political thriller. Now we move into political intrigue after these 3 episodes. I think these 3 episodes, and that explains like the neighborhood that he's in. I call it a neighborhood because there's so much of the neighborhood that you see. The people that he's with, the people that he has to interact with on a daily to day, the Nepter droid, his mom, essentially. What I got out of that was more the vibes of a movie like The Town. which was a really great, gritty crime story. That's like The Town if it was a noir movie. So that might be The Departed. But oddly both I think set in Boston. That's where I was like, oh wow, like this is not the show that I was expecting. This is like at times I was like, am I watching an episode of The Wire? Like
Yeah.
it felt, because it was all this high stress, and we spent so much time with the cops and or the rent-a-cops, which I've got pages and pages of notes about this. I think I even like wrote a whole diatribe about how fascism starts. But we don't need to get into that.
We have plenty more shows that we're going to do that we can get into that.
But I think that that's going to be the pivot, is that, and again, that's where you get the B2 droid, you get the time with Fiona Shaw, you get the time with learning about kind of crime and punishment in his world, you get the haves and the have-nots. And oddly, I think you get a really interesting preview of a high-tech society that isn't like in Star Trek, technology seems to like solve a lot of problems, and in this it's like technology just serves to like hold people down more.
Yep.
I it seemed like he's having to do so much to just get by, and that the technology is just there to be a part of an oppressive force, and not this liberator. Like, yeah, you could just take off,
Yeah,
and like
it's
go off into space.
it's almost it's an interesting third character that's almost like, I mean, not almost like, of course it's unfeeling, unthinking, it's just technology. I agree with you though, is it has this feeling of it can either be used to sort of enslave you, that maybe that's the wrong way to describe it, like to keep you in your place, or to boost you up, but there's not a lot of middle ground. And if you're not able to interact with the technology or be around it and pay your way through it the right way, you're either below it or you're above it, but you're not in the middle with the technology, the things that could improve your life. You're either stomped down by it to a degree or you're pushed up, but there's not much else. I definitely get that vibe. You mentioned earlier the character's name is Cyril Karn. I had to double check it.
Cyril, that is correct. Cyril. Like Archer's Cyril.
Exactly.
Same kind of setup.
Yep. And I don't know if you remember. Did you ever watch the Band of Brothers miniseries?
Yes, I 100%. What, this is a Band of Brothers week. This is the third time it's come up. I don't know. It's got to be in the air.
I coordinated with some people to talk to you about Band of Brothers just to make sure you had.
Someone keeps bringing it up to me. Like, have you watched Band of Brothers? It's like, yes. I love that.
Just making sure. Like, for a long time, by the way, for a side tangent, for a long time, before I had like streaming Netflix, whatever else I had, or before streaming Netflix was really a thing, I had the DVDs. I think I still have them someplace. I had the DVDs, and at least once a year I'd sit down and watch the entire series because it was just, I love that series. Anyway, I bring it up because Cyril, to me, is Herbert Sobel in Band of Brothers.
Yeah.
He is, and the scene that the whole time I'm thinking, this guy makes me feel like Sobel or something like that. And then the scene where they get all the rent-a-cops kind of together, and the one who's like just and has no idea why he's so but he is there, when he gives the like, we're going and we're going to do the things and the stuff, we don't know why, but we're here, sir. And then the guy gets up and says something, and everyone's just like, okay. And then they all walk off, and that dude walks up to him in kind of a very tense way, brilliant speech, sir, or something like that. I'm like, he is Sobel. That's literally like emptiness, but screamed really loud. I have nothing to tell you, but I'm going to say it really loudly and intensely. And I just like, wow. I won't call that part derivative. It's definitely, it made me connect to something else. But I really liked that because it, at least for me, I mean, for anybody watching it for the first time or who didn't have that reference of Band of Brothers in this case, I'm sure many other references too, but if they didn't have that, I'm sure the character, like people I was on this stream with, were commenting, I don't think had seen this, they're pretty young. And so I think they were like, oh my God, this guy is just so uptight, and oh, he is clearly going to screw up. Like they picked apart all the things that we ended up seeing. But for me, all I could think of was like, that's a really good character reference because it's a character that gets people to do things. He clearly got them to do things like Sobel did in Band of Brothers. Nobody actually wanted to follow him, but I think one of the other characters in Band of Brothers said it best when he said, that man's a genius. And someone's like, what are you talking about? He goes, no. He goes, do you think there's a person in this company who wouldn't wake up at 4 a.m. just to piss in that man's cornflakes? Like, and it made me think, like, Cyril, every single person who's doing something at his request, like, none of them like him. But you can tell that. But he is clearly egging them on to do a thing they probably really wanted to do anyway, but they probably wouldn't have done until this guy comes around and says, this is what we're going to do. And it's like, okay, great. You're on the line. I'll go do the thing. But I thought he really annoyed the crap out of me. And I think that's exactly what was intended. And so he did a great job.
Yeah, I could totally agree. He's, again, I called him Fussy Boimler, which is already, Boimler's already fussy. He was young. I wrote down young Kyle MacLachlan. And I thought about this because there's all these speeches, he gives a speech, which is just hilarious. And they are great opposite numbers for each other.
Yeah.
And I know that Matt had to depart. I just saw that in the chat. I hope he has a good night. And thanks for being on the show with us tonight. The thing that I thought with this character Cyril was Cassian and Cyril are opposite numbers of one another. They have different levers that they're trying to pull, and they're on different ends of a spectrum, where you have Cyril, and this is where you get kind of the dichotomy too of the Empire and the Rebellion, where you have order on one end, which is Cyril. Cyril is after order. It's the whole, there was a murder, we should be investigating this. And his boss, by the way, so many Game of Thrones actors, so many actors from The Crown that were appearing in these episodes. You get order on one side and you get justice on the other. And justice is very different than order. Order is something that you impose, and justice is at times something that you feel. And I actually thought a lot about these two characters a lot, and that's where I'm not joking around. Like, I ended up writing a lot of notes just about what these two characters, the story these two characters are trying to tell. I liked the actors. I mean, I already was a big Diego Luna fan, but this actor who's playing Cyril, I was just 100% behind. But before I get into any more of that, I don't even think we've gotten out of beyond like maybe the first 5 minutes of episode 1. We haven't. I don't think we've talked a lot about how things that we liked and other things. I did write, I love Mean Boimler. I was like, let's keep bringing that in. This is a great character. I love a good bad guy. And he's a great bad guy because he's in a way kind of bad at it, if that makes sense. He's like the rent-a-cop, all hopped up on
his character does something that I really appreciate, it, like you said, in a good antagonist, which is specifically the antagonist who really thinks they are doing the right thing. And not in the I'm ignoring other stuff. Like, no, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm telling myself to do the right thing, but I'll walk in like Thanos, walk in the room and slaughter 50 people. But like, no, I'm doing it for the right reason. But he knew that he chose to do this, and he knows what he's doing. And this character is not that. This character really does believe the ends justify the means, and that the ends. The means that he's using are totally fine. Like, no, we're supposed to do this. Why would you think we could? Like, why would you think he so thoroughly believes in the thing that he believes in that by the end of the 3rd episode, when things do not go the way that he hoped, as anyone listening right now would probably expect, he is so stunned by the fact that you watch him freeze because he cannot process that things would not go the way that he would expect. That he's like, but this is the thing we're supposed to do. Why would people fight against us? Like, this is the thing. And he is so taken aback by it. He basically just stands there and chaos is happening around him. And he's just like, And I really enjoy that, not because I enjoyed seeing that, but because it really tells you that that's a good antagonist to a chaotic protagonist such as Cassian Andor at this point, specifically at this point, because he is still very chaotic in what he's trying to do. And so to see almost the exact inverse of that, where not chaotic, so much order that you can't be flexible. And that's what we
Yes.
get with that character. He's so like when his boss asks him about, did you modify your uniform? And he's like, oh, well, I kind of, and his boss is almost like, I just don't, dude, I don't care. I didn't actually need you to respond. Like, okay,
Yeah.
whatever, I'm moving on.
The
But he's like,
bo-
he was almost like, but I put this extra pocket here, and why won't you let me tells you about this pocket? His boss is like, dude, I
Yeah.
seriously don't care.
No, I mean, this guy was like the model yuppie, and we were talking about this concept, but we've talked about this concept before, which is being right for the wrong reasons and wrong for the right reasons. And like an example of that is like you're hungry, or someone that you love is hungry, and you steal a loaf of bread so that way they can eat. So
Mhm.
you're wrong for stealing, but it was for the right reasons. This is a guy who's right for the wrong reasons. He's right because those are the laws, but he's wrong because they're the wrong laws. And I love that setup. And we've talked about this. And Jeff, I know that you I don't want to belabor this too much, but I always like a setup where it's an auto antonym almost,
Mhm.
where it's a thing that cancels another thing out almost immediately. The being right for the wrong reasons and wrong for the right reasons. Um, Cassian steals and kills and that's wrong, but what he's doing and why he's doing it is for the right reasons.
Right.
Um, uh, uh, the, this guy Cyril is right, and he feels right. That's also what's dangerous about him. There's nothing more dangerous than someone that thinks that they're right and has power, and that's this guy, and he's wrong. And I think that I got kind of wrapped up in that because I thought about how that's like the little rocks that start an avalanche towards that type of oppression. Is
Mhm.
that if you have people, because and you saw it in his speech, because he lacked the confidence to be able to really give that rousing speech to the other
Oh my
Renecops.
gosh, yes.
And so what you saw in him, because also you saw when the other guy kind of lowers his head and kind of touches his nose, so now you're aware that he's very aware of his audience. And you and I are of both public speakers, and honestly, when we're on stage, you'll discharge thing I've learned is I discharge my anxiety into the audience, but I don't bring my baggage, so to speak. So I'm not trying to have like my insecurities on stage. I don't project those onto an audience member. Um, he was doing that. And so then I just started thinking about how here's a person that wants order and wants control because they don't have control. They want power and they want confidence because they're insecure, they're without power. And that it's this really easy step that gets people like this who do have a little bit of power to then create a system that allows them to create like force the world into their shape, so to speak.
It
And it
reminds
almost,
me.
yeah, it's crazy. I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
just
No, you're
think
okay.
about
And we'll get to Joanna's comment in here in a second because I think that's really
yeah.
interesting. What you're saying reminds me of in Marvel's What If series. In nearly the culmination of the What If series, when we see Vision, when we see sort of like, uh, what was he? Ultron Vision in the suit, got one Infinity Stone, has basically killed everybody because hey, now there's no wars, and he kind of stops and takes a deep breath, but then starts to kind of look around for a moment, like, shoot, so what do I do next? It reminds me of that because, it reminds me of that as in this character thinks that that's what they want and will go for it and get it. When they
Yeah.
get it, though, they will realize very quickly that's not actually what you wanted. Oh, shoot. I'm not sure if I know what I want. But you've already done all of the things you thought you needed to do to get to this point. And thankfully, this character didn't get that satisfaction, at least in this arc. I do hope we see this character again later on, because I'm sure there will be a time jump and other things will happen. And I'm really hoping we see this character later, maybe not playing a big role, but sort of as a still there and still struggling to find the order that it wants, with Andor and others have kind of almost seemingly moved on. I'm excited to have that sort of thing come back around, and for that person to be kind of challenged by the things they think they really want. I'm not saying that I want that person to go, you know what, I'm going to join the Rebel Alliance. Maybe, but I would rather it be sort of a, I'm just going to go leave and do something else now, because I finally realized the thing I thought I really wanted is not what I want, and I'm not sure what that is yet, and I've got to go figure that out. That would be kind of interesting.
This dichotomy, which is rules versus chaos, because, by the way, like, to answer Joanna's question, I see Cassian's life as one that's just ruled by chaos. His life is chaotic. And so decisions are missing like a lot of deep thought behind them.
Yes.
They're just like hand to mouth, like moves of desperation, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And just chaos. And by the way, there's another really great protagonist antagonist relationship that's built off of that same split, and it's the Batman and Joker. Where you have one character that's driven by rules and another character that's just doesn't live by any.
Mm-hmm.
In the Joker's case, it's because he's a psychopath, and you might say that we'll have to learn more about Cassian Andor, but I think that his are more of moves of desperation, moves of his chaos is because he can't stand still. He has to just keep running to try to find a way through this all. And that Cyril is this, it's like Bizarro Batman. Batman's got all these rules. Well, he's got one really big rule, but he's just trying to apply order at all costs. And you could say that, that's why there's a number of Batman stories, by the way, that are written where Batman is also could be seen as somewhat of like a fascist mentality. I'm not going to lie. Like, you read The Dark Knight, Returns. Like, that's a real dark book. And it's one totalitarian view against another totalitarian view.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I like characters that have the antagonist protagonist when it's set up to be an opposite number, and that's what we have here with these two characters.
I totally agree. That scene. So Joanna brings up this comment about what do we make of the Cassian accidentally killing the one guy, but just murdering the other. It really played out everything that you just said, Ryan. In that, when they're calling him from the distance and he stops, it took me a minute to realize they're actually yelling at him. I'm like, why aren't you just walking away? But he waits. They come up and they accost him. And the way that he responds, to me, gives the impression that he's not sure how to respond to them. He sort of wants to be like calculating, all right, to my pocket, just come up and I'll wait for you. But he also, when it plays in his face, and you can tell he is struggling with, crap, what do I do? Like, these guys are going to take me in or whatever else. I could be the bluster, but I can't. But I could be, and like, it's like he's going back and forth with the emotions. And then finally, to your point, in an act of seeming desperation in the moment, an opportunity presents himself. And I will say that, not himself, itself. I will say that Cassian Andor, even at this point, is nothing else if he's not an opportunist. And the moment an opportunity comes up, he takes it. But it's also, like you said, out of desperation, which means he misses a lot of subtext and context when he's taking those opportunities that may turn out to be something really poor for him, such as the scene that Joanna was describing. So he takes the opportunity to headbutt the guy and turn around and steal a gun. Okay, but there are consequences sometimes to that. And in this case, one of them was you just killed somebody. And now you're stuck in a situation where the other person responds in a way that he didn't expect, which was on his knees sort of begging for mercy. The guy was being a jerk before, but as soon as it happens, that person's personality completely changed. And then Cassian's now again faced with, what do I do? If the person was being a jerk to him or trying to accost him again, shooting him would be like, whatever. But that's not what happens. And so to your point, Joanna, it is straight up murder. Like, you just shot the dude right in the face. Or
not heroic.
Like, it's not heroic. I don't know. It's not even, oh God, something bad's about to happen to me. The table turns in an instant. And now that person's in a submissive position and you have all the control and you still chose to do the thing. I find it interesting, and I really think it does set up for us exactly who Cassian is at this point. And it reminds me of him when he says to Jyn Erso, you have no idea, I've been in this game since I was 6 years old. And it obviously he's not 6 in this scene, but it harkens back to that moment for me when he says that years later to Jyn, that
I thought about that a lot.
Yeah, that he has done things that he is not proud of, but he did them because they needed to be done. And I think that's the story he's telling himself later on, because letting himself think about these things too much would probably break him. And so he's like, I can't think about it that way. Like, that's just not the mindset I can have. I did what I had to do to stay alive. That's what he's told himself.
I think that that's the survivor mentality. I also think too that it's the individual and the system. Like, I mean, I don't think it's any accident that these are the Rent-A-Cops that are accosting him, because it's a part of this victimization by his oppressors, which is all, by the way, if I'm correct, literally all forms of government that this person has always known, and society that you could throw out there too. That when he's a child, when you have those flashbacks when he's a child, the strip mining that's being done on his home planet, and they even say, oh yeah, like this, this planet where he's from, it suffered this great terrible imperial mining disaster, and it made the entire planet toxic. But when you see the flashbacks, that's happening during the Republic days.
Yeah.
And so I actually started to talk about this as his actions, his responses, they're all there. That's what I meant by this. This reminded me of like The Wire. Like, there were times where I was watching this and I just saw people making decisions out of clear desperation and trying to cull together some form of personal, like, justice in what is feeling like a world that is a universe that is just out to chew him up and spit him out. That even in this society with the Republic, where he's a child, that's the Republic. When he's growing up, it's the Empire. That in both systems, and by the way, you saw this in episode 1, The Phantom Menace, the original Star Wars movie, the Star Wars movie, where Anakin Skywalker's mother, the Padme says something to the effect of, "Oh, well, slavery doesn't exist in the Republic," and Shmi, a slave, says, "Yeah, the Republic doesn't exist out here," and that in all of this, you still have systems where the strong dominate the weak, that it's happening even with the Republic, and that it really reminded me of one of my favorite Star Wars movies, which is The Last Jedi, which is, you have someone like Cassian Andor that's just having to scrape by, and yes. And yeah, I don't think that scene was set up. I think that all of that was built to be. This is a hyper political show. That's what I meant by I wasn't expecting this type of politics, which is someone that is just like, yeah, I'm just crushed by my life, by the system, and by the galaxy. I don't see anything heroic in that. I just see a victim.
You bringing up the strip mining of his home planet, and that it's done under the Republic days, is what was I found most interesting about that was, one, exactly what you just said. Also, I should say, is the fact that it is, you said it's a political show. Politics are nuance, and in politics, it's the getting people to not look at the nuance, to just hear your message. That typically is right. Sometimes for good, sometimes not for good. And in that situation, that's what I also picked up, that there's always a lot more going on than anybody sees or knows. How you interpret it is going to be different. There's no one single interpretation for anything, but that was so fascinating to see. Not only that it was the Republic or somebody within the Republic, maybe not, the actual Republic themselves, but somebody during those years was strip mining that planet and caused a disaster. Probably not. They just strip mined it and they didn't want anyone to go back to see what they had done. But what was interesting is when the two like pirates or whatever they are find Cassian and she subdues him, they're talking to each other, and she makes a comment to the effect that if we leave them here, the Republic's just going to come and kill them all anyway. So let's get them out of here. And I heard that. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Wait, what? Like, what? Why would they better come back to that? Like, why would someone from the Republic, an official, that's what she was implying, come and kill these kids who are living on this planet? What the heck happened on this planet that they don't want anyone to know about? To the point that they would just kill a bunch of. It's just known that like they'll probably kill everyone here just because they don't want someone to know. Yeah, that part really got me. Like, there is so much more that was going on, and we learn with all these new shows, we learn even more about the corruption and things that were happening even during the Republic years and the waning parts of the Republic years, having nothing to do with the Jedi. Just like that, this Republic wasn't just all good or somehow just magically better than the Empire. It gets back to your order versus justice comment. You know, the Empire went to an extreme extent to have order, and not necessarily mete out justice, but have order. It gets that to a degree. The Republic unintentionally almost was the opposite. Like, almost like, let the states decide. Yeah, but if you have nothing overarching it, then that can descend into chaos very quickly. There has to be a rhythm between the two things. And this is starting to show that rhythm that everyone kind of just assumed, because that must have been better than the Republic, or worse, the Empire must be worse than the Republic. It's from a certain point of view. Like,
no, that's what I mean. Like, I'm not gonna lie. This show got me to like the sequel trilogy a lot more. These 3 episodes have got me to like the sequel trilogy a lot. And the reason why was, here I'm watching Cassian Andor, whose life was terrible under the Republic, whose life is terrible under the Empire. And I was thinking about how the rebellion, or the alliance, is to restore the people that were in power back to power. People like Mon Mothma, people like Princess Leia. By the way, like, I know what I'm saying here is like kind of sacrilegious. And there's a line in The Last Jedi that has always stuck with me, which is when Kylo Ren says to Rey, we need to let the past die. We have to kill it so that way we can move on. And I kept thinking about how the end of Return of the Jedi is the reinstallment of the people that were in power. But like, we're going to bring back the Jedi, we're going to bring back the New Republic, and we're going to put the same people that were running the Old Republic into running the New Republic. And guess what, everybody? It's great. But what about all these people that were like, the Empire seems to be a system that a lot of people bought into. And I think that's because of the thing, which is, yeah, we want order. And I was thinking about how the sequel trilogy, with all of its problems, ends with the people that are the rising power are these people that were in the muck.
yes.
A scavenger who was abandoned by her parents on a junk planet, a former child soldier, and a guy who used to be a spice runner. And all I kept thinking of was like actual revolutions that have taken place. Those are the people that usually succeed to power in the end of them. They are those are the ones that are in a more in a power, because they for them it was the revolution at all costs. And that's when I started thinking about Cassian Andor saying in Rogue One, you don't know what I've done. You don't know what I've done to do this. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I got wrapped up in this show because of that. And I'm someone, I've studied a lot on revolutions. I'm a big, I've read a tremendous amount about the Russian Revolution, about the Cuban Revolution, about the revolutionaries, socialist and communist revolutionaries that have took place in Africa. Um, this was very interesting to me because of that. So yeah, it was almost like this is the making of how revolutions start.
I totally agree. Actually,
It's a tipping point.
as we're getting towards the end here, I wanted to make sure to flash this comment from Joanna, because yes, Joanna, I think you said it far more succinctly than we have, which is exactly this: that what has happened with this planet has affected him in such a core way. Like his as kids, we have these core memories that are developed for us, like these simple moments that become core to our being, and like our staple memories that build up who your personality is for your first few years of life. And his have been really torn down. What was also interesting is that there's something else about the planet. Excuse me, the planet that he comes from, or at least that he was living on. I don't know if that's actually where the kids came from, but that's where they were living when we were introduced to him. That later on, as an adult, the term Canary, I think it was Canary or something like that, is the name of the planet that he came from. People are like, shh, we don't. Why would you tell somebody that's where? Do not. Even the person who raised him basically is like, don't tell people. Why would you tell someone that's where you're from? And it got me really thinking. Like, I hope we learn more about that later on. That it's like a through line that exists. That's not a major plot point, but that we do get to tie off later on. But it made me wonder, to your point, Joanna, that what else happened that got those kids on that planet? Is that where they actually grew up, or did something else happen? Like, it almost had this Lord of the Flies, but not negative Lord of the Flies, or like the Maze Runner is kind of what it felt like, that these kids are just there. They're not really sure why they're there, but they just exist and they just go day by day. I really wonder what that's going to lead to. But I believe you are right, Joanna, that it has absolutely affected who the person he has become.
Yeah, no, I really think about this more like, this is like, because in my mind I was like, oh, the strip mining killed their parents. That's why it's all kids. Is that they're the native inhabitants of this planet, and that's why they have a culture. That's why they have a language. By the way, I love that there weren't subtitles for their language.
Agreed.
I like that. That's just good acting. I actually hated when the one guy is reading the computer screen and it translates on the side of the screen over here for us. And I thought, come on, that could have just been like an acted thing or like a line of dialogue. I'm not a fan of subtitles. It's often you do not need them. The acting will tell you what's going on.
There are times, I will say, where I turn closed captioning on, but the reason I do it is different than what the emotion or the thing you're responding to, which is
I understand when it's like I want to catch the dialogue.
Yeah, like wait, what did that person just say? I think that was important. I didn't hear the word that, but sometimes I can't hear it super well. But no, I'm with you. I don't want to see the diminishment of another culture in the show where just seeing that there is a culture and that it existed and it was disrupted is the plot point. That is what you need to know. Knowing the words that they were saying or understanding the words they were saying, you can, like you said, you can guess what's happening. They're doing their thing. Something flies overhead and crashes. They put together a party and they go out. The older kids go after it. Like whatever they said basically doesn't matter because you know what happened. You saw what happened. There's no knowing the words would be like, now I know the words. But it doesn't add anything to the situation.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It
doesn't move the story forward.
No, it's let the actors. This is a visual medium. It's let the actors do the acting. I found that to be really strange. I know that we're coming up to time, so I'm going to do a lightning round really quick of things that I liked and didn't like.
Shoot,
if that's okay.
Yep.
Okay, I didn't like BBY. The timing that it's so many years before the Battle of Yavin.
Oh yeah.
I don't need that. That took me right out. That would have been like if I don't know, they started playing ZZ Top music during one of the kids were dancing to it. I would have been like, wait, how's ZZ Top there? Like that's how strange of a thing it was to see had this many years before the Battle of Yavin. It's like, come on, we don't need that, everybody. We're cool. I loved the use of all of these actors that I really liked. Like the guy who's the boss of Cyril. That guy's on Game of Thrones. He's also in The Crown. Love that actor. I hope to see more of him. I liked the 1984 reference where there's all this like color splash that people have. Like, so in 19, I'm sorry, not in 1984, in Brave New World, I'm probably going to get this wrong. Alphas are wearing gray, betas are wearing blue, gammas are wearing green, deltas wear yellow, and epsilons wear black or brown. I can't remember. And deltas wear khaki, and the people on the planet, they're all working. They all have that type of color set up. And I was like, oh wow, that's like Brave New World. Like, I liked that reference. I also love color when you're in a dystopian background, when everything else is gray and they just pop.
Yeah.
I liked the bells. I did not like the flashbacks. I even have again with the flashbacks. I don't understand this need to tell these stories in such non-linear fashion at times. I like it, and it's overused. They did it with Book of Boba Fett. An example of how there's just, you can do it in small shots. Mandalorian did it in small shots. Yes. And then they just move forward. Like it's just a forward-looking show now. I don't like that because I feel like all shows that are not movies now need to have this mystery box. What's the mystery? That's what's going to make me watch all these shows. And that was one of my other big things. Is I was like Rings of Power is like that right now. It's hard to watch Rings of Power because they put too many things in a mystery box, so that way they'll get you to tune in next week. I don't need that. Love the special effects. Love the special effects. Love the special effects. I kept throwing that in here. I love the mix of the practical effects. I like that there were real sets, by the way. Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't all that digital stuff. I love that everything looked like 70s camping gear. And the only correction that I wish is Fiona Shaw has this amazing speech to the cop where she's saying, "Do you hear that sound? Do you hear that sound? It's a reckoning. It's because it keeps coming back. It keeps coming back." I will bet you dimes to dollars that in the original script, it wasn't reckoning. I bet it was revolution, because a revolution is a thing that keeps coming back. And that's what makes a revolution dangerous. And I thought they probably changed that because they didn't want to make it too revolution, because maybe that would have been too political. But what she was talking about was a revolution, because when they would go quiet is when you should worry. And I loved that.
I did love that. We were all kind of like, oh, George, what's going to happen with the sound stops? Okay, I'll do my quick ones and then we can call it a night. My two likes and the one dislike. The two likes, obviously I loved a lot of stuff, but the two things I want to call out. The hammer dude doing the bells. Oh my God. I'm like, you are my hero. Like, dude, that guy he was like, passion. This is my thing. And every time I looked at him, all I could think was he looked very much like the actor who plays Otto Hightower in House of the Dragon. And I was like, oh yeah, I don't think it is, but he did the like, like get himself all psyched up and then does his drums. I'm like, dude, you followed your passion, buddy. Good for you. I loved that. And then I really liked the nod to, and this is what makes me really think that these kids didn't actually, that their families and stuff are not actually from that planet, is the clothing they were wearing. Several of the kids had on, like one of the kids actually had on what looked like a X-Wing pilot jumpsuit, orange with the white stripes. Oh, yeah. Like several kids had other clothing that was clearly not native, like a native person's clothing that's made from local materials. It was clearly scavenged stuff, which makes me think that they aren't actually from that planet and something got them there, but they don't know that. Probably been there for a couple of generations and this is just what they know. I don't know. I'm very curious, but I do like that because it does tell us that even if we don't find out much more about that there is more to that story than simply native kids who live on a planet that has a very like Stargate-y kind of feel where, the gods come and take the one Egyptian kid and all that. Like it has that it would have that kind of feel. And I don't think I'd really like that much, but I like that there's a different element here that hopefully we'll see something about later on. one piece that I didn't like is there's a scene where Cassian is on a ship in that sort of like shipyard, people buying ships sort of thing, and a guy comes up to him with the two warthog looking dog things, and like
Yes.
they're like, Cassian, what are you doing? And Cassian's like, don't worry about it, buddy, and he's repairing the ship. Instantly, like Cassian's attitude changes, and so he starts acting almost like the snappy kid who's gonna take a joyride dad's car, and the guy's like, what are you doing here? And I didn't like it because it was so completely different than how we've seen him behave in every other scene in the episode and in all the episodes. And it made me question, like, well, maybe you have this relationship here, and maybe that's who you really are, but it's not how you've been behaving with anybody else. So, and it didn't seem like he was playing it just to get the guy to let him do something. The character seemed genuinely like almost childish. That's probably the wrong way to describe it. Almost childlike in that moment. And I'm like, I get it. There's aspects here that we don't.
Did not work for me.
It didn't work for me either.
Totally agree.
I was like, you could have done this a little bit. I mean, maybe there's a reason you did. I'm sure there's a reason you did it, but it just didn't feel right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I felt like that scene had been written when the character was maybe modeled after being more of a user. And I feel like there were hints of that because I kept seeing that part of the characterization there. And I actually think that they might have gone back and made him a little bit more troubled rather than a user, because I think they were trying to walk this tightrope, which is a character, a bad, someone that you could sympathize with. Yes. I think they were trying to make him a sympathetic character. And so because of that, they didn't want him to come off as so much of a user. And that's why there's all these little pocket scenes that he has where he's like, hey, like, take care of this person, take care of that when I'm away. Hey, like, yeah. I need this, and how he isn't a manipulator. He's just desperate.
Yeah.
And he's just always running. And I think that's the characterization they ultimately landed on, which is someone who thinks that they can only survive if they are always in motion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why that was so done. I will say this, you brought something up because there was a thing that I really liked, and a thing that stood in that scene in particular. I like when things look dirty, like because of use, because of course they've been living in these clothes or something like that. Like, I really like the Gandalf, for example, has mud in the Lord of the Rings. He's got mud on his clothes, and I've always thought that was a great touch because of course he's got mud on his clothes. And if there was a thing that I liked and I didn't like, is some of these characters looked dirty because they would be. And some of them were too clean.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds silly, but it's like every time I'd be like, where's this shower that this person's getting? Because none of these other people seem to be getting it. And where's this washing machine? Because some of these characters had bright clothing, and it was super clean. And I kept thinking, like, that's the only production thing that I'd be like, you guys missed on that one.
Yeah.
But that scene in particular that you're talking about, I remember seeing that guy's face is dirty. And I thought, like these people are just like, they're just scraping by.
Exactly the phrase I was thinking. They're just, it's just enough to get by day to day with no thinking of the day beyond the day.
Yeah.
Like, can I just wake up tomorrow morning? Cool. Then we're just going to do that. And that's it.
Yeah.
Dude, this has been awesome. And we didn't even get to episodes like 2 and 3. We kind of hit everything, but this is good. I cannot wait for the next episodes to come up.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait.
I love this show. I absolutely do. So everyone thinks
the cranes, Jeff. Those look like the AT-ATs. We were talking about this in the last 2 episodes. Those cranes
actually
look like the cranes from the Bay Bridge.
Yes, and you know what they also looked like? If you ever watched Westworld, in one of the episodes when they're overhauling part of the park, there's this big like mining device that like chews up the ground. It looked like those things too. I'm like, but no, you're right. No, it's the cranes. You're right. We're just going to go the cranes.
I agree with you completely. No, that's not it. I just wanted to bring that up because we had been talking about it so much, and because Jeff's trying to wrap up the show, and I am insisting on going through all of these things. So I'm going to stop now, and we will talk more next week.
We will.
Yeah,
We will have plenty more. We have plenty more to talk about. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for being here. Joanna, Matt, everybody, and Team Replay. If you're catching this, we really appreciate you sticking through the whole thing. It's been a lot of fun. And more Andor next week. We have more notes and more things, and it's just going to be fantastic. So hit subscribe, like, all the things, and have a wonderful night.
Have a good night, everybody.
See ya.